The risk we're talking about today is medical board discipline that begins in one state and then follows a physician across state lines because of how information is shared under the Interstate Medical Licensure Compact. The agencies involved are state medical boards, including boards like the North Carolina Medical Board. The trigger for discipline is usually not fraud or some sort of extreme misconduct. It's usually something much more ordinary. Something like a baseless patient complaint. We've all had times where somebody's been unruly for no reason other than they're just in a bad mood. You could also have a simple documentation issue, a prescribing concern, or maybe you entered into a consent order that was meant to, quote, put the issue behind you. And the reason this risk matters more now than ever is simple. More physicians are practicing across state lines. More states are participating in the compact. And information between boards moves faster and more completely than most physicians realize. My name is Nick Dogle. I'm a North Carolina attorney with North State Law based in Raleigh, North Carolina. My practice focuses solely on professional license defense, including representing physicians facing medical board complaints, investigations, and disciplinary proceedings. If you're a physician licensed in North Carolina or practicing in multiple states through the Interstate Medical Licensure Compact, this video is meant to help you understand where the real exposure actually is before you're forced to respond to it. Here is one concern this entire video is built around. A licensing issue that feels limited and manageable in one state can quietly reshape your ability to practice in every other state where you hold a license. Not because the discipline is automatic, but because review is unavoidable. Most physicians don't lose licenses because of fraud. They lose flexibility, sometimes permanently, because a single issue in one state doesn't stay where it started. If you're licensed in multiple states, one complaint can follow you longer and farther than you expect, even if it never rises to the level of suspension or revocation. And by the time most physicians realize that's happening, the information has already been shared, especially if the state in which you are licensed is part of the Interstate Medical Licensure Compact. The Interstate Medical Licensure Compact is often misunderstood. It does not, in fact, create a national license. It doesn't replace state medical boards either, and it definitely does not shield physicians from discipline. What it does is provide a voluntary, expedited pathway for eligible physicians to obtain separate, full medical licenses in multiple participating states. Each license is issued by an individual state, and it's going to be governed by that state's laws and rules, and it's enforced independently by that state's medical board. Now, the compact's purpose is to expand access to care, especially through telemedicine, by reducing licensing delays, strengthening public protection by improving interstate information sharing as well. And that last point is where the risk lives. So, how compact licensure really works. So to use the compact, a physician must designate a state of principal licensure, or SPL. So the SPL has to be a compact member state. They also must issue a letter for qualification also, and that has to verify that the physician meets strict eligibility standards, which include no disciplinary history, no criminal record, no controlled substance actions, no pending investigations either. So if you've got something going on that's an investigation with your board, that's going to be a no-go right out the gate. And then once the SPL verifies eligibility, other compact states may issue their own licenses using that information. There is no compact license. I know with other boards, they do have like a nursing compact. That's not the same thing. This is only state licenses issued faster if those aforementioned criteria are met ahead of time. Many physicians assume if an issue happens, it just stays with the one board. That assumption is 100% wrong. While the compact does not impose automatic discipline across the states, it does ensure that disciplinary and investigative information is shared quickly and reliably. Each state then decides whether to open its own inquiry, whether disclosures were adequate, whether conditions or restrictions are appropriate, and if the discipline doesn't transfer, well, the scrutiny is going to. So let's take a realistic scenario. Let's go to Dr. Smith. So Dr. Smith practices in North Carolina. He holds a compact issued licenses in several other states. Patient complains, leads to a board investigation, and there's no patient harm. But Dr. Smith agrees to a public reprimand via consent order just to resolve the matter efficiently. So from Dr. Smith's perspective, the issue's done. But what happens next is where the ripple effect begins. So that disciplinary action becomes reportable. It's going to be shared through the interstate channels. It's going to be disclosed on future renewals. National Practitioner Data Bank is going to get a hold of it as well. And then other states don't republish Dr. Smith's automatically, but they do review the action independently. So the same event now is going to exist in multiple regulatory contexts, each with its own standards and expectations. I've had this exact scenario I don't know how many times with physicians that are clients of mine moving to North Carolina from other states. They get something wrapped up in California, for example, or Montana, or Texas, or wherever, and we've got an issue in North Carolina that we have to resolve. Boards care deeply about consistency. They compare how an issue was described. They'll compare how an issue was resolved. They'll compare how an issue was disclosed later, or if it wasn't disclosed at all. What creates problems isn't usually the original conduct. What creates problems usually is inconsistent explanations over informal responses. That's another bad one. Treating one board interaction as isolated, not providing enough information, or frankly, just being dishonest to a medical board. That happens more than you would actually think. And a single consent order can become a long-term licensing issue if it isn't handled with an understanding of how far the information travels. You gotta understand the repercussions of a single consent order and what you're getting into when you actually put your pen to paper, either digitally or in real life. And this is where most physicians get in trouble. They have a tendency to over-explain without realizing others are gonna read this. They wanna clarify records after notice. They wanna treat board communication as informal when it is definitely not. Another thing that I've seen a lot is delegating responses without oversight. That's a huge one. If you're just gonna have somebody else do it, you got to make sure that they do it correctly and that it does not leave your email or doesn't go in the mailbox without you thoroughly reviewing it and making sure everything's accurate, because your name's attached to it and it's going to come back on you. Generally speaking, what we often recommend is a shift in mindset. If you're licensed in other states, assume that board actions are not going to stay local, because they likely will not. You want to slow down before responding. We're not in a rush to get things out the door. We want to get it done correctly, right? You want to be deliberate and consistent. That goes back to the slowing down. And you want to think beyond the immediate investigation. And you got to understand, it's not about being defensive. It's about recognizing that licensure mobility increases your exposure. The Interstate Medical Licensure Compact is not dangerous. It really isn't. But it is also unforgiving. It's going to make licensing easier, and it has been for countless physicians out there. But it's going to make your accountability broader. One issue doesn't discipline you everywhere, but it's going to follow you everywhere. And understanding that difference matters. If this video was helpful, I have another video on this channel that explains what actually happens after a medical board complaint is filed and how investigations unfold. I'm Nick Dogan with North State Law. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.